Wow, Josh, it's number 50. This is the 50th episode this year. That's almost 100 hours of content that we've been putting out all year long.
I just show up for the music. I just be energized.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Guys, welcome back. It is the 50th episode this year. As you guys know, we usually do 2 hours. So we're looking at almost 100 hours of content. We've kept it short a couple weeks, but we're somewhere around there answering mortgage real estate questions. So we appreciate you being here. Appreciate the support that you guys have graced us with and continue to grace us with every week. So thank you for that. But this past week, Josh, latest data today, pending home sales down 4%. Woohoo. No big surprise there. We've got what? The 10 years actually shot up quite a bit from the last couple of weeks. How's that affecting interest rates?
Interest rates are holding really well. So we've talked a lot here on the show, Jeb, about the growing spread all year between mortgage rates and the 10-year treasury. So 10-year treasury is up, mortgage-backed securities are off. I wouldn't read too much into it. We're not going to know anything about the direction of the market until the first part of January. Essentially, for the last week and a half and continuing through the rest of the year, there's about 5 people actually trading bonds. And apparently they all want to run things higher. We ended up the day at 386, almost 387. And mortgage bonds were off another 22 basis points. But I had a loan that we were looking at locking last week, didn't. And mortgage bonds are probably 100 basis points worse, which would normally be about 0.25% in interest. And it's hardly moved at all on our rate sheet. So lenders are looking at it and realizing that those spreads are going to be coming down, but probably more importantly saying, we're not super worried that this is going to hold. We had talked about, we thought on the high end, we would stick at about 3.62, and we've broken out of that range, but not a whole lot of reason to read into it. We're essentially oversold at this point and would expect a correction in rates once the market opens back at the beginning of January. But as you and I keep talking, for the last 6 months, everything has been about inflation, and inflation primarily as read by core CPI, which we get that, the second week of January. So we'll have a better handle on it then. We've shown the chart 18 times. The expectation is absolutely for month over month to be in either the 0.2 to 0.3 range. And we have a 0.6 falling off, I believe, for last year at this time. So you're going to see continued improvement.
0.5 or 0.6, yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's a big number to be replaced by a little number.
But the one thing to keep in mind, guys, is the Fed doesn't meet in January, right? It's one of their months they take off. And so if for whatever reason you got a big spike in inflation, that would not be good for the market. But again, a lot of this is built in, right? The Fed's already come out. They've done their little dot plot chart. Expectations are kind of built in the market. So as long as the market does what the traders are expecting, is what the market's expecting, then you don't really see a lot of volatility and things kind of move along, if you will. So, but like we've said, you're not going to see a lot of change in December housing market versus January housing market of 2023, although the data is going to continue to get worse just because of the way it's reported year over year. So just keep in mind, don't get caught up in the headlines. Just pay attention to what your market's doing. And then, the market's really going to be telling as we move in through the spring, which at this point, 4 months from now. So that's where we're at. But Josh, I was going to say something and I completely forgot what it was. And that's just a summary of the year ending, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, no, and housing is going to be dictated and driven by interest rates. Interest rates will tell the story.
Yes,
it appears as though for the foreseeable future, rates should continue trending lower. We've sort of beaten that up. Inflation should be coming under control. Interest rates should be improving. And if that's the case, it's going to put a floor under the poor doomsayers' calls for a crash. If rates were somehow to catch fire and continue increasing, inflation doesn't get under control, that would be your case to see home prices really depreciating. But Jeb, the thing that we talked about here, we can count with affordability at low levels due to high prices and much higher interest rates than where we were a year ago. Volume is going to be down. There aren't a lot of sellers and there aren't as many buyers because there aren't as many people who can afford to buy at the current prices.
Yeah, and understand when we say inflation getting under control, we're not talking about inflation dropping to 2% target, the Fed's 2% target in January or February. We're just talking about that core CPI number, that headline CPI number actually trending downward. And because of how they do their year over year calculations, right? You take each month, you add it, right? Or you multiply it by 12, however you want to. Well, you got to add it. I guess you can't multiply it by 12 because each month's a little bit different. But you add those number over 12 months, that gives you your CPI number. So the expectation is that number is going to continue to go down every month. It's still not going to make your groceries any less expensive. The things that you're buying on a daily basis are not going to go down. Everything that you're paying is still going to be inflated. It's still going to be hitting your pocketbook for the most part. You're just not going to see the increases like we've seen over the last couple of years.
It's important, Jeb. What you said there's very important. If we have a year of 10% inflation, which we didn't, but we were approaching that 7-8% at parts of the year. If it goes down next year to 2%, prices did not go down. You have 2% on top of the 7, 8, 9% appreciation or inflation. So it's not something that immediately corrects itself that makes household budgets any better. But when you look at the charts over time, what happens when inflation is trending up? Interest rates are going up. When inflation is trending down, interest rates are going down. And we definitely appear to have peaked, even though inflation is at much higher rates than any of us are comfortable with, than the government, than the Fed is comfortable with. Definitely appears to have peaked and to be trending down, which should bring mortgage rates down with them. The ultimate, end result of where we get down to will largely play out in terms of what happens both with our economy and globally. If we got a heavy recession, rates could go down lower than people expect. If the market has the so-called soft landing, maybe we're somewhere in the 4.5% to 5.5% range when we finish up with the improvement in rates.
And so, Josh, if you have a new buyer calling you today and they want to have the conversation, thinking about buying a home in 2023, what does that conversation look like? Not in the sense of you getting them pre-approved. Let's kind of skip over that. But when somebody says, should I buy now, right? Should I wait? What does that conversation look like? We haven't really had this conversation offline, but we talk about it a lot in different contexts and answering different questions. But 2023 is going to be a different year, right, than 2022 in many facets with regards to inventory, with regards to home sales, with regards to home prices, rates, inflation. It's going to look different. So having that conversation, what are you asking that potential buyer, or what are you commenting to that potential buyer to kind of help guide them?
One of the things that we have always talked about here is having a longer term time horizon. Want to make sure that they're not thinking, hey, I'm going to own this for a year or two and move up, move somewhere else, get married, have a kid. What does your life stage look like? What does your career look like? Your relationship status, your family status in terms of family size? Do we have a longer term time horizon? Because I don't see any reasonable expectation of 5, 6, 7% annual appreciation over the next couple of years, maybe the next 3 to 5 years. So absent that, you want to have that longer term horizon where you can pay the mortgage down, where you can get some slow, steady appreciation and have some equity built up if and when you're ready to move. So what I like to tell people is in 2021, in 2020, late 2020, the conversation we're having here is you really can't afford to wait. If you want to buy, you need to get out there now, because we don't know how long rates are going to remain this low. But more importantly, month over month, we're seeing 1.5% increases in home prices. If you're in an area where homes are $700,000, that's $10,000 every month you wait. You cannot save nearly as quickly as home prices go up. We're not in that market anymore. I think home prices are going to be relatively stable, probably low single digit appreciation next year. That's what most people's forecasts are for most markets across the country. You need to do your research and know where you're at in your market. But if that's the case, we don't have any urgency to buy. If homes go up 3% next year, what is that? 1/3% a month? It's not really an appreciable month over month change.
So what do you say, Josh, to the person who says, well, if you think home prices are potentially going to move sideways and you believe that interest rates are going to move down, why would I buy today? Why wouldn't I wait 3 months for interest rates to go down or to hit that 5% number, and by then house prices let's just say, I think home prices could go down, right? I think you could see declines 5%, maybe 10% in some markets that were over appreciated. And, that's going to be different for different markets and where the peak in prices were and all of that. But there's people out there saying, well, why don't I just wait? Why would I do that in January? So how does that conversation go?
Unless you have a crystal ball that tells you home prices are going to go lower, if your life stage says it is the right time to buy, I would be in the market looking for the right home. If you say, hey, I'm going to be really picky and I want to make sure I'm getting a good deal on a home or getting a home in a really good premium location or a home that's super upgraded, by all means, be as picky as you want. There's no urgency there. But I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone else does. If rates continue to trend down, you're not going to see depreciation. But we already said if rates were to creep up for any reason, home prices can absolutely come down, especially in the excessively appreciated markets. So if you're there and that's a concern, if that's a super heavy concern of yours, you're probably not in the right life stage of being committed to buying a home. You're thinking about buying a home, you're interested in buying a home, but you're not committed to doing it. So it really comes down to where your head is at. There's no way for someone to tell you that's a wrong thought or you're looking at it the wrong way. It's just a way of looking at it. If it's a big fear of yours, stand aside, wait the entire year, come back in 12 months and let's see what happens. Because I don't think home prices are going to be much higher. I don't think they're going to be much lower, but you'll have another year of clarity of what's going on in terms of inflation, interest rates, and all that fun stuff.
Another year of people calling for a crash. Yeah, didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I think these are good conversations to have because these are the questions that people want to know. But you mentioned something, the thing that we always talk about, the longer term time horizon. I can't tell you how many DMs I get through Instagram, through TikTok, through different platforms, even here on YouTube, people emailing me or whatever, saying, hey, listen, I'm 20, 22, 24, whatever the age is, doesn't matter. Saying, hey, listen, I want to get into buying my first investment property, getting into buying my first home. In a couple of years, I want to sell it and I want to buy another one. Really, that is the mindset. And that's going to be tough to do over the next couple of years, in my opinion, just because of what Josh said. I think you could see home prices not really move up or down big in any big way for a number of years, just because of what we saw over the last couple of years. Now, with that said, does that mean we can't go up 5%? No, doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean we can't go down? No, it doesn't mean that. I'm just saying the average over the next couple of years is probably going to be pretty flat just because of what we've seen. So when you're thinking about buying a house as a first-time home buyer, somebody that plans to live in that property, make sure you're taking the time to realize, figure out what's important to you now, where you see yourself in 5-7 years. Because, as I've talked about on this channel before and having conversations with buyers, oftentimes we talk about what somebody wants. It's 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, whatever the number is. And they start looking, and then for whatever reason, they can't find what they're looking for. And this goes back to, during the pandemic. Somebody that we helped on the show here that I wrote 20 plus offers were for, they wanted a 2 to 3 bedroom property. And there was a time during that process, because it was so difficult to find it, they were willing to consider a 1-bedroom property. And I was like, don't do it. Do not buy a 1-bedroom property. You're going to outgrow it. Guess what? They're already at the stage now where they're outgrowing the property that they're in. I just talked to them, a month ago at my annual client event, and they're like, we're already outgrowing this property. Had they done it the other way and bought the 1-bedroom, they'd be screwed. So you've got to look out a couple of years, realize what's important. And you might have to make sacrifices in some areas of buying a property, even in a market that's not going crazy, just because there's going to be less inventory out there. It's not going to be, just because the market's moving sideways, just because interest rates are higher, doesn't mean a lot of inventory is going to come to the market and people are just going to be giving away homes. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to have less inventory on the market because there's less inventory on the market. It's kind of one of those things that we talked about in the past, and because of affordability. And that's going to be the name of the game for 2023, in my opinion. So just make sure you're doing the right things for you, not for anyone else. And if buying for the right reasons and assuming all of that, historically speaking, what we've seen historically works out, then, you're going to be just fine with regards to real estate. So Josh, should we get some questions?
Yeah, but if these guys don't step up and ask some more questions, we're going to be having wings early tonight.
We can just, we can just chat. We do have some people already hollering at each other in here. Jacqueline, real estate agent, Arizona, maybe. I believe just reached out and said that she's going to be back in March. Would love to connect. So I am here, not going anywhere at the moment.
I heard that story last time she was coming to town, and she had way too busy a social calendar to stop by and visit.
I don't remember the reason. There's people that reach out all the time. Actually, John, buddy from Phoenix that we did on the podcast, and he was here like a week ago, and he was like, "I want to reach out when I get there," and he was here. He was busy. I never heard from him, but that's okay. It's okay. Logical Thinker says, typically, how long do mortgage lenders require borrowers' funds to be seasoned when purchasing a home? So, Josh, do all loans require seasoned funds? What does that mean, and how long?
So the actual term is sourced and seasoned. It should actually say sourced or seasoned. So in terms of it being seasoned and usable as your own funds, we can't have large unexplained deposits. So for most loan programs, most account types, we're looking at 2 months of statements. So it means generally anywhere from 60 to 90 days of seasoning so that it doesn't show up on the second statement. Because remember, I may ask you for 2 months, and it's 2 months of statements, and we're 10 days away from the next statement. Well, the statements that you provide are going to go back 80 days. So if we see a $100,000 deposit and you had $5 in there before, the lender is going to rightfully want to know, what's that $100,000? Did you borrow the money? And is there some undisclosed debt that we need to know about the payment? Did you rob a bank? Might you be going to jail? There's any number of reasons why the lender is going to want to know that. Now, if that money is there, does it have to be seasoned? No. Maybe your mother gave you $100,000. Maybe your uncle passed away and you inherited $100,000. There are other ways that are acceptable to source those funds. So it's more appropriate to say that it either needs to be sourced or seasoned. And the seasoning does not mean that it magically becomes good at a certain point. It means that the lender is not going to require you to provide 12 months of statements. So because we only need 2 month statements, and in some instances only 1 month, it just needs to not show a large deposit on the statements that we're required to have in the file to document your assets.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see. Miss Shadow Llama. What is a normal monthly amount for escrow to increase annually? Our total mortgage amount, including escrow, went up monthly $199.47, 8.93% year one, and 9.6% year two. So, Josh, why would your escrow, your impounds increase annually?
So for us here in California, you should never see a change like that. We have Prop 13. Your property taxes are limited to going up 2% annually. So when an underwriter underwrites a purchase for a borrower in California, they cannot look at the current owner's tax rate. Because let's say you buy from a sweet little old lady that bought her home in 1972 and it's assessed for $48,000 and you buy it for $948,000. Her taxes are going to be 10% of what yours are. So if they qualified you based off of her taxes like they do in other states, because they're not going to change year over year or not change significantly year over year, they would be understating what your payment is, and you may not actually even qualify for that mortgage. So the fact that you saw an increase this large tells me that you're outside of California, and that can happen when home prices go up a lot year over year, and the assessor's office is reassessing homes to market values in a fairly timely manner. So the things I would love to know: what state are you in? What's the value of the home? How much did homes go up? Does your state have much of a homestead exemption where some of that is shielded from assessment? Because absent that, what is changing there? If you have a fixed rate mortgage, that can't change. We know you borrowed X dollars at X% interest over 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. So that has a fixed amortization schedule. The piece that can change is, did your homeowner's insurance increase? We've seen this in areas, Jeb. Big flood comes through and no one wants to renew policies. And to get your insurance, it goes up from $200 to $500 a month. That could be all of it right there. So was there a large increase in your homeowner's insurance? If not, was there a large change in the assessed value of your home? Those are the only two things that should be able to change. absent that, someone made a mistake in managing your impound account, which we see those not frequently, but not that infrequently either.
It must be that time of the year for increases with regards to impounds and escrows and all of that, because we've got a handful of comments here that were around that. Some of them are comments, some are just questions in general. But Darren says, my mortgage lender raised my mortgage by 25% in year 2 on a 30-year fix. Turned out the previous owner had a senior discount for taxes, and I underpaid my escrow. So, yeah, you got your supplemental tax bill is essentially what happened there, and they increased the taxes. It sounds like it maybe wasn't increased through the lender. And then you have what I saw another one here. Josh, what was it? Tiffany came in and said, my escrow went up because my county taxes went up, which is another thing to be aware of in your mortgage calculation. So we're definitely seeing a pattern here. I mean, these are things that we rarely ever get, but it seems like the lenders are reassessing those escrow balances now because taxes were paid or what have you. So yeah, just, your lender should be having these conversations, guys, up front. You should not be surprised with, if your property value goes up substantially and you're outside of California, then obviously that's something you're not really going to be able to control in how your property taxes increase. Many states out there have homesteads that keep them from increasing more than a certain amount. Again, if you're in a place that doesn't have a homestead, then not something you can control. But places like California, places that have these exemptions on how much they can go up, your lender should be talking about the idea of impounds and, these potential increases or what have you. And if you're in California, your lender should be talking about supplemental taxes to some extent. You should be having that conversation that, hey, listen, you're going to get another bill at some point after you close, talking about, there's additional taxes to be paid. And if they're impounded, you should be fine. The escrow company should pay it. But again, there's a lot of newbies in the business that don't even know what supplemental taxes are to begin with, and not having those conversations. So it's a reminder to make sure you're working with a pro.
She followed up and said, it's Tampa, Florida. First year increase was property tax. Now homesteaded. Second year was property tax. Both years had a shortfall. So property values in Tampa increasing fairly rapidly. You can always ask them to show you how was it calculated at closing. And if they say, well, it was based off of the previous owner's tax rate, then you're going to know where you started from. And you say, okay, cool. Can you show me what the assessor's office did each year with my assessment? But that's the most likely cause is generally the property taxes, and occasionally it can be homeowners insurance.
All right. Alex says, is talking about longer term time horizon. Any thoughts on how migration patterns will be affecting the housing market across the U.S.? So this is the only prediction I have. And this is not a political statement. Just understand it. It's happened over the past. People will move out of states that are have a majority controlling them. States like California, for example, where you have a super majority in the state making decisions, and there are people that don't like that, right? And so they're going to move to states that don't have that. And typically what we're seeing at the moment is people moving from blue states to red states for that very reason. Outside of that, people are always going to migrate to areas with better weather, coming down from, Canadians coming down to the lower part of the U.S., people, New Yorkers moving to Florida, all of that's going to be natural progression of people moving. But outside of that, I don't really have much in the way of, what I think is going to happen. Josh, what do you think?
I would say the same thing. What have we seen migration wise? A lot of people going to the Southeast for two primary reasons: better weather and lower home prices. Well, home prices throughout the United States, but definitely in the Southeast, have gone up. So some of that affordability has gone away. But for whatever reason, young people like sunnier, warmer weather than colder, snowier, wetter weather. So you have that piece. You also have people leaving high tax states. Forget red versus blue. High tax states, high home price states.
That's kind of one and the same, right?
Yeah,
without saying it, but yeah.
It's a nice way.
The states like Tennessee that have low tax states, Florida, no state tax, Tennessee, no state tax. These are Arizona, no state tax, Texas, no state tax. I mean, that's the migration. That's where people are going. Now they make it up for it in other areas. A lot of times it's property taxes. So it's not just a free, move to avoid taxes, but that's typically what you're seeing happen. So, but with all of that said, guys, and all the headlines you read, California still has a lot of people here, right? I just saw another headline that the exodus from California was severe. I'm like, it doesn't look like it to me. There's so many damn people here, like you can't do anything. So we need more severe migration out of the state. And people always ask, well, who's buying homes there? If everybody's leaving, who's buying homes? Do you realize how many people are here that don't own homes? And how many people, like the net migration isn't nearly what the migration numbers report, right? They never report what's actually coming into the state it's because that's not a sexy headline. But yeah, there's less people coming in than are leaving, but it's still, guys, there's still too many people here. That's the real deal.
So leave.
Yeah. So yeah, make it better. The freeways suck. Let's see. Get some more questions here.
Jeb,
yep.
more importantly, we'll get to Hayden's question.
Yep.
Hayden's a good gentleman. I like his question. But did I tell you, I don't know if I've spoken to you since then, we went to see the Mavericks in downtown LA, and downtown LA is undergoing some gentrification. So you'll have Skid Row, and then like the next block over, a couple of really bitchin' old hotels have been redone into hipster hotels.
Yep.
Really nice theater. So the show was at the theater at the Ace Hotel. Well, it just so happens, for those of you who are Netflix viewers, a quarter mile over on the very next block was the Hotel Cecil.
Oh, yes.
So we stopped by and checked out the Hotel Cecil, and it's
been redone.
It's redone and closed. So it was very, 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 very minimally redone and attempted to be brought out. And then they came out with that documentary, and the place rapidly shut down. So there's an interesting, maybe not interesting California story that if you're downtown, drive by the Hotel Cecil. It's just as creepy as it looks on the show.
We were going to get to Hayden's question, but then somebody gave us a super chat. So Hayden, I'm going to have to pause on you for a moment here and go with Ray. Thanks for the super chat. Found a property on the MLS for 200 days in February of this year. Wishful sellers, 900,000. Purchased it for 750. Got the terms I wanted, 16,000 and closing costs. Hero program, 56,000. Solar paid off to do the work. That's my point. Not to brag. Okay, so Ray just gave us $20 and told us a story. So hey, listen, property sitting on the market for an extended period of time. If those sellers need to sell, those are the homes you want to go after, right? I mean, but they have to have a need to sell the property. Otherwise, getting somebody to negotiate is going to be difficult. But in this case, it looks like you were able to make it happen. So congrats on that.
And remember, so Jeb, you talk about motivation of the seller. Some sellers are just crazy. Maybe, we've seen houses where that house was never 900, not going to be 900. One of my favorite stories here in Huntington, there were 2 lots on Main Street back in the 90s. And I said, I want to buy one of those, but the guy's nuts. He wants $500,000 for him. And he was nuts. He was nuts, Jeb, for so long.
Totally wasn't.
That after 7 years, he got what he wanted for them. And the people that bought them and put homes on them are very happy that they paid his insane price.
No, exactly. It was nuts until somebody didn't think it was nuts. And now you look at it and think it was nuts that you didn't buy it because it's gone up so much. Yeah, no, that's how it works. I mean, I told you guys the story about my neighbor who priced their home for 1.2, and I thought it was worth 1.1, and it sold for $1,075,000, right? So there's another one, same community. Similar floor plan, but this one's a 3-bedroom instead of a 2. Similar square footage. It's low. It's like 12, maybe 1,300 square feet. Priced at it started the market at $1,395,000. $1,395,000. Thing needs to be fully gutted for one. At the height of the market in say May, let's just say if it got its peak price, it was never 1.4, right? So they've reduced that property down. I think today it sits at 1.2. So it shows a $200,000 price reduction. In all reality, home's probably worth $1,150,000-ish. So it's probably going to have to reduce it a little bit more. But just, I mean, if you look at that price reduction, you think, holy cow, these people are giving the property away. No, these idiots overpriced it by $200,000 at least to start. More so, if you look at what it's actually worth. So
the moral to the story is don't look at discount to what they came on the market at. look at discount to last sale. If you're trying to say, oh, this neighborhood dropped X, find me a similar comparable sale that sold for more. And
Very
that's
well
what
put.
you've seen in terms of a drawdown. We hear people all the time, oh my God, homes in my neighborhood are down $150,000. Well, cool. Show me what that is. Like, no, you had an idiot in your neighborhood that was asking $150,000 too much and sold for what the home is actually worth. That's not to say that there's no areas where homes have decreased, but we're seeing a lot more of those wishful sellers who are actually motivated, getting realistic, and that, selling at market value versus some sort of big decrease in home values.
No, and Hayden, we're getting to your question right after you guys hit the thumbs up. There's 115 of you watching.
Are you holding his question hostage?
I
If
am.
enough people give
115
thumbs up,
people
you'll
watching.
answer?
I mentioned to start the show. Many of you guys weren't here then. This is the 50th show this year. Almost 100 hours of Josh and I's time. Just giving you guys free information. So give us the most thumbs ups we've seen this year. How's that? That would be a nice present to end the year. But let's get back to Hayden, because we promised Hayden this question about 10 minutes ago. I was paired with an agent through my previous lender in my April pre-approval. Nice to work with, but has only been in the industry for 7 years. Any benefit in finding someone more seasoned? 7 years is a reasonable amount of time to be a real estate agent. They've been through not really a down market, but they've been more than just the pandemic years, which I think is important. So do you need to go find out a new agent? It depends on how you feel. I mean, if you feel like the communication's there, if you feel like they have the ability to negotiate on your behalf, they can answer your questions, they know the market that you're in, then I don't think you necessarily need another agent. But if one of those things is lacking in any way, then go out and find somebody that you feel more comfortable with. If not, just have another conversation. Call another agent and see if you get the warm and fuzzies from that agent that you're not getting from your current one. And if so, make the move. Otherwise, I don't think 7 years is showing a lack of knowledge in the market, but it's more about having the conversation and seeing where you stand. So,
and I would say, Jeb, I work with agents who've been in the business for 3 years and are on top of their game. And you're like, I don't know how someone could learn that much in 3 years. That's impressive. I know people that have been in the business for 20 years and you're like, how can you be that dumb having done this business for 20 years? So time is not a good proxy for quality. But like Jeb said, if you're getting feelings that they're not great at negotiating, they're not on top of the market, presenting everything to you, being able to advise you, why is that home priced at that price point? And is that too high? Is that too low? What's reasonable to expect? How can we make offers? They should give you the warm fuzzies from that end. And if they're not, then find someone new. But I wouldn't worry about 7 years not being enough to be a pretty darn good agent.
Dude, completely off topic. I don't even know how this thought popped into my head, but I spent almost 2.5 hours of my life last night that I'm never going to get back. I watched The Glass Onion on Netflix. Just happened to be searching Netflix. I look at the cast. You got Edward Norton. You got, good actors in this thing, like top-notch actors in this Netflix production. And I think this has got to be good, right? And it starts off great. Little murder mystery, tech guy, private island. I read an article afterwards. Some people think it was, they're making fun or whatever of Elon Musk, but nevertheless, dude, the ending, I'm not going to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it that wants to watch it. Maybe paused it halfway through because it was 2.5 hours long, but the ending sucked. So back on to going to real estate question. Just wanted to get that out there. Do
you want to go back to real estate? I have another market we can talk about.
I mean, I just wanted to vent because
you're not getting your hours back.
2 hours of my life, 2.5. The first thing I do when I go watch a movie, Josh, is I look at the time. If it's over 90 minutes, I say, I don't know if I can sit still for 90 minutes and watch a movie. But last night I said, I'm going to do it because the cast was great. Little did I know.
You should have.
If you guys have seen it, I want to know, am I crazy? Was it good? And I just was watching something, was I watching the wrong thing? Anyway, we're going back into real estate questions. Sorry, guys.
You should have invested your time in watching George and Tammy is what you should have watched.
George and Tammy.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. But hey, is that like Tommy and Pam?
Tammy are? No, do you know who George and Tammy are?
I don't.
It's George Jones and Tammy Wynette. They did a whole miniseries on them on Showtime.
They couldn't have been any worse than what I watched.
Oh,
Just
it's
saying.
awesome. It's
I mean, I'm
excellent.
just saying the bar is really low, Josh.
Yeah. I'm 4 hours into George and Tammy and still enjoying it.
All right. Brandon has he has a question. I have a house being built and ends in 90 days or so. Want to back out because I feel I am underwater the minute I move in. Another house near me not selling for 100,000 lower. Should I wait? It's a good question. It depends. I mean, here's the thing. Is your deposit refundable? Or is that something you're willing to walk away with? If you walk away from that deposit, are you in a position to rebuy something else if you find the right property? If it's truly $100,000 less, that's a big number. Unless you're buying a $3 million property, then it's not really that big of a deal. But if it's, 7, 8, I mean, even $1 million property, that's 10% less. Maybe try to renegotiate, go to the builder and see what they say. Like, listen, hey, this house is listed for this. Is there anything you can do to help me out? Cost wise, payment wise, price wise, and try to negotiate and then make the decision. It's, I think looking at the underwater scenario up front is hard, right? Because there are people that are going to be underwater that purchased in 2020. I do believe if you're buying again for the right reasons, you have that longer term time horizon, you're going to be fine. But I understand that's a tough thing to swallow right going into the property. So I would try to have a conversation and see what could be done. And, if you're, kind of draw that line in the sand, and if they're willing to work with you, great. If they're not, because you're always going to, wonder what if, right? If the value goes down further, you're going to wonder, hey, should I have not moved forward with it? And if you get in and you don't do it and prices go back up or something sells in there and brings the prices back up, you're going to wonder, well, what if I did do it? So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. It's all about what's right for you.
So Brandon had a follow-up. He's got 18,000 in upgrades so far. So deposit upgrades.
You lose that.
There's money on the line there. And with the $100,000, where are we seeing that? Are they in the same development? I mean, the sellers, the builders are usually very good about giving concessions to avoid price reductions and not selling for a lower amount. So it sounds like most likely there's been a few phases, and someone who bought in an earlier phase is selling for 100,000 less. I would like to know that it's in the same development, similar floor plan, similar square footage, similar upgrades, because there can be huge variations from one house to the next in terms of someone buying just the bare bones and doing no upgrades versus someone buying the model that has every upgrade under the sun, buying from the seller, reselling in the market afterwards. So it'd be important to know those things to know if you're actually going to be 100 underwater.
I was reading your comments, guys. I appreciate all of these. They're fantastic. People think, I guess, I should have liked Glass Onion.
Blair says you're just wrong. Blair says you are
and
wrong.
That's okay. Like, maybe it wasn't as bad. I guess I was expecting something. I was expecting a much better ending. That's really what it was. It was really good until like the last probably 20 minutes. I just thought there was going to be a more in-depth story, and there wasn't. And but this comment came out, and I thought this was probably just fantastic. I mean, probably the best comment of the night, and I haven't even seen the rest of the night. At least I didn't waste 2 hours of my life watching Reventure Consulting.
I thought he retired. I thought he retired and took away the joy of silly manipulated numbers every week.
I mean, when you've been wrong for 2 years, it's difficult to keep that going. But who am I to say, probably get some hate comments here in a moment. Let's see. Sarah, having a difficult time finding a lender. Last time I saw a new construction home, the builder had a high builder fee and other fees, decided to wait and save money. So I'm going to do you one here, Sarah, and help you out. There is a link scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Go to that link. I'm happy to refer you to somebody in your state that can guide you through the process. Josh, I don't know. I need to find out the number of people that closed using a referral from last year nationwide. I know 19 people closed using a real estate referral that I made out of state, some in state of California. 19 people closed using that same link. I don't know what it is mortgage wise, but it's a lot more than 19. But I would be curious to know if there's a way to find out. Be interesting. If we could reach out to that network and get a state by state number, would be fantastic.
We can give it a shot.
But anyway, guys, check that link below if you need to get referred. Keith, how much will my credit score get dinged if we get pre-approved but don't end up buying? Josh?
Not much. And it really varies on your credit score. So someone with a 625, 630 credit score is going to get hit more than someone with an 800 credit score. And it's a very temporary blip. The other thing to remember is if a mortgage inquiry, any mortgage inquiry within a 45-day window is treated as a single inquiry. So if you talk to one lender and you want to talk to another lender, or a builder makes you cross qualify with their lender, do it within a 30-day window just to be safe, but they're all going to be treated as one. And that if you have good credit, it's going to be a 3 to 5 point hit. And within 90 days, 120 days, you will have those points back. The folks that need to be worried are on the lower end of the credit spectrum. And more importantly, if you've had a bunch of other inquiries, if you went out and you had a couple car inquiries, and the ones that will hit you as multiple inquiries are credit cards. So if you applied for 3-4 different credit cards for a consumer loan, for a debt consolidation, what the model is looking at is saying, hey, no one's going to take out, very few people are going to take out more than one mortgage. A lot of people might take out 2, 3, 4 credit cards. So this is someone looking for credit. And if you're on the lower end of the spectrum, you've probably already have a high balance relative to your credit limits on other cards. And if you're looking for more credit, that's where it's going to have a much bigger hit. So if you're thinking of buying a home, you probably have your finances under control. You have a good to very good credit score. It's not going to make much of a difference at all. And within 120, 180 days, you'll have fully recovered. So I wouldn't worry about getting pre-approved now and then not buying. The benefits or the advantages of having certainty and knowing what you can do now today outweigh the small hit to someone with a good credit score.
All right. Let's see. Gives. Can a village suburb potentially pass an ordinance to prevent short-term rentals? Yes, they can. Josh can give you an example. Owns a investment, second home, whatever, in Rancho Mirage out in Palm Springs, and they passed an ordinance. What, a couple months back, Josh? 6 months, maybe?
Yep. So we are no longer allowed to do short-term rentals. It's got to be 28 days or longer. And it makes a pretty big impact. And it'll be interesting to see what it does to values out there. What I can say is once we get past the first part of the year, we get a lot of snowbirds in the desert. They want to get good and cold before they come spend a month or two in the desert. So longer term, short-term rentals, 30 days or more, are pretty common. So I think that the traffic will pick up out there. But I've been out there a bunch, from Thanksgiving here through Christmas. And I can absolutely say in Rancho Mirage, there are less people in our development and some of the other developments around us, just because you can't rent for less than 28 days. So it can have an impact on values. It can have an impact on the income that you can generate. And for us, our weekly rates are much higher than what our monthly rate is for renting the property. So absolutely, cities can and will pass laws restricting the use of your property.
And a follow-up question, what would one consider when buying a potential rental property? I'm assuming short-term rental, but let's just kind of talk about it in general. Like if you're buying an investment property, rental property, what should you be concerned with?
Well, I think they're asking specifically here about the Bears planning to move to Arlington Heights and building a stadium. And Jeb, we have experience with that here within the last 5 years. I had several people telling me we're buying in Inglewood, we're buying in Hawthorne, buying all around where they built SoFi, where the Intuit Dome is going in for the Clippers. The Forum was redone there. Super tons of gentrification in that area, lots of development, other entertainment besides the stadiums. And those values have just gone nuts. They've gone nuts everywhere, but they've gone more nuts. So I would look and see what else is going in with the stadium. I would want to know for sure, not potentially that the Bears are moving there. I would want to know for sure that the Bears are moving and what kind of development they're bringing with them, and what you can do in that area. I don't know that it's a great direct corollary here for us, just because it all coincided with the market going up big. It was sort of an accelerant on top of something that was already going up. I don't know that we're likely to have that, but I don't think it would hurt if you have an area that's getting some momentum and upgrading and turning over time, and then you get big industry like a stadium coming into the area. It certainly could improve the values.
Good. Let's see here. Brianna says, would you recommend a USDA loan in the current market in California? So I mean, What's a USDA loan? What's the pros of a USDA loan, Josh? You get can purchase up to 100% financing, right? No down payment required, right? It has to be in a rural area, so it has to meet USDA guidelines, which we're not going to talk about here. But assuming it meets those guidelines, you can purchase up to 100% financing. In some cases, you can even get your closing costs covered if the home appraises for more than your purchase price on the property. You can use that excess to go towards your closing costs. In some cases, coming in with no money down. What is the risk of that? Well, the risk is that you're buying in a market that's probably going to move sideways, slightly down, slightly positive for the next couple of years, which means if you need to sell over the next couple of years, there's a really good chance that you have very little equity in that property and could end up being underwater. And if values go down, you bought it 100% financing, you could be underwater on that property. That's the risk that you're taking in using USDA or any loan that has a minimal down payment. But with that said, Josh, we can give you several scenarios of people that have bought 3% down, 3.5% down, 0% down using VA or different types of financing that have now 30, 40, 50% equity in their property because they bought with a minimal down payment because they didn't have the money for the larger down payment. And, they bought for the right reasons in their life. They hung on to those properties and now they're sitting in a good position. Now, does that mean the market favored them? In some cases it does. But some of these people have, again, bought, the story of your, of Angela's friends, Kim's parents that bought at the top of the market in 06. They were underwater for years. Well, now they still own that property and they're sitting on a ton of equity. So it's all about buying for the right reasons. I'd be less concerned once you know the risk about, what's going to happen in the market and just worry about, is it the right time for you to buy that home?
The biggest thing, anyone asking that in California, there are very, very, very limited areas that are USDA eligible, and they are relatively far flung and away from jobs. So would you be comfortable living in one of those areas, and would your job enable you to live in one of those areas and commute or telecommute? So those are the important things with USDA. It's a great loan program. Jeb did a wonderful job of covering the pros and cons of it. It's just we don't have a lot of areas left in California that are USDA eligible.
Yeah, because it has a population limit on it. You have to be to be deemed rural. I don't know. I can't remember the population limit off the top of my head, but it has to have, can't have more than a certain amount of people living there. And in California, we're pretty packed. Even in some of these what are considered rural areas, it's still, take the Bakersfields of the world and some of these markets. Is that even USDA at this point, Josh, or is that still Fresno? Some of these markets, are those USDA or not?
Most of them aren't. Most of those areas that you traditionally think of, but some of the further out areas around there. So you can be Bakersfield adjacent, Fresno adjacent to a degree, but if you're in Fresno, the population's too large, you're going to have to get.
And the reason that's important is because those areas like Josh mentioned, there's less people, there's less companies moving there, there's less population growth. All of those things affect home prices, right? If you look at the majority of the United States, a lot of them saw more appreciation over the last 2 years in their markets than they've seen over the last 20. And that's the way that it works. So, if you're in one of these markets that really didn't appreciate, prior to the pandemic, didn't see a lot of growth, and you're moving into a market where you're likely not going to see a lot of growth anyway, these markets are going to be less impacted by big declines in the market, but they're also going to be less impacted when the market appreciates a lot. So you just got to make sure you understand the risk when doing little to no down financing.
Jeb, on that same topic, so Brianna asked a really good follow-up question. Adelanto is USDA. This is a good discussion. There's not really a question there, but is it worth moving to a less desirable area for home ownership? And there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's just, and if you grew up in Adelanto and you're comfortable and the area, no problem. Back before the crash in about 2005, my brother-in-law looked out and saw, hey, I can buy a house for $100,000 in Adelanto. And he bought it, and it went up to maybe 140 before everything went down. And I think he ended up selling it for about $110,000. That was after like 10 sets of tenants in 7 years, 3 of them obliterated and destroyed the place. So just know your areas. Get with a good realtor that knows the areas, knows the quality of schools, the crime rates, everything. And again, let's not make this, I'm not saying bad things about Annalanto. I don't know. I know my brother-in-law's experience there. And I always tell people, you can't look at relative prices. You can't say, hey, that's way cheaper than where I'm at, so that is affordable or that's good. You got to ask, why is it cheaper? First off, it's way, way, way out there, very hot, very desert-like, and for whatever reason, it's just there's some issues that come along with it. So by all means, we are huge proponents of owning homes here. I would be careful about doing anything to be able to buy a home.
Great. A. Ramos, how does home building and a recession affect prices? So we've talked about it before. Typically during a recession, we're already, we technically, I guess we're not in a recession at the moment because the definition is somewhat changed, but nevertheless, employment still remaining pretty strong. But what we've talked about in the past is typically as a recession comes, home builders start building less property, right? We've already seen home builder sentiments down 12 months in a row. And there's a number of properties that have permits pulled on those properties, about 2 months of inventory, in fact, where builders aren't building those properties, right? And they're not likely to build those properties until something improves with affordability, something improves with the market that shows that, hey, listen, it's worthwhile to continue building these properties. So in a recession, you're likely to see less home building activity unless it's already started. They were going to finish it. And recession, what happens, house prices during a recession, I think it's 7 of the last 9, if I remember correctly, Josh, home prices move sideways. Yep. 2 of those recessions, home prices went down. 08 was one of them. But during those 2 recessions, the housing market is actually what caused the recession. And so in this case, we're not in that position at the moment. So I think, if we're talking about what happens now during a recession, I think home prices remain pretty stable. That's what we've talked about. Builders, again, I think are probably kind of sitting back, just watching to see what's going to happen before adding any new inventory, adding any new communities that weren't already under construction. But Josh, anything you want to add on that one?
No, I wouldn't be sitting here thinking there's going to be some monster opportunity. If rates stay high, people aren't going to sell. So we'll have lower sales volume, fairly stable prices. It goes back to the conversation we had at the beginning of the show, Jeb. Like, buy when the time is right. You are not capable of timing the market. There's nothing out there telling me that there is a huge, massive risk that you have to stay out of the way. Have a long-term time horizon. You buy the best home you can afford with good long-term financing. Hope to be able to refinance a couple times along the way and get that payment more affordable and stay there and build some equity.
I like it. Really, really solid advice. Blair Burkhalter, who loves the glass onion, says, if your realtor is super pushy on getting you to buy sooner, is this typical, or do I need to tell them to back off or get a new realtor? Having been saying this spring for a few months now. So anybody being pushy in any business isn't fun to deal with. Doesn't matter if it's real estate, car sales, whatever. I think it's important to have the conversation. If you like your agent outside of that, have the conversation and say, hey, listen, I feel like I'm being pushed to buy this home. I'm not ready. I will let you know when I'm ready. But some agents are just follow up is they do follow up, and it can seem pushy just because they're constantly following up and checking in and all of that. They're being pushy in a way that seems overbearing. Then find a new agent, right? I mean, you should be comfortable with the process. You should be comfortable with that agent. You shouldn't have somebody, getting you to buy a house. Typically, pushy people come because they need a sell versus those that, are financially stable and have a surplus of business, want you to make the right decision for yourself and are less pushy in those cases. But, real estate is sales, right? And so people in some way feel like that they need to be pushy in order to get people off the fence when, not all buyers operate that way. So you got to do what's right for you.
As a salesperson in the housing industry, I want you to be comfortable during the process.
Absolutely.
It's a stressful process under the best of circumstances. If I'm pushing you and you're feeling extra stress, then it is unlikely that you're going to be comfortable, have a good experience, and that's going to spread to all of us. You know what I'm telling people in the current market, I wouldn't necessarily set my heart on, hey, I'm waiting till spring. Hey, I'm waiting till summer. Say, plan on buying in the spring or plan on buying in the summer, but keep your feelers out there, keep your eyes open. Something may come up that makes all the sense in the world for you. And beyond that, no one should be pressuring you other than to say, hey, is it okay if I send you some properties now in case you see something that really strikes your fancy that may or may not be available later in the spring and summer?
Good advice. Let's see. Rick says, are there certain loan types that are designed to make monthly payments more affordable for potential buyers? Josh.
Really, the thing you're looking at is a 2-1 buy down. There's things called graduated payment mortgages. No one does them anymore. So a 2-1 buy down, an adjustable rate. If you're looking at a 5-1 or a 7-1 arm, that would have a lower payment. But those are the things. I mean, how do we get a payment lower? We have a lower interest rate. How do you get a lower interest rate? Instead of a fixed, you take an adjustable. You do a buy down where the rate is paid. So basically subsidized for the first 1 to 2 to 3 years, with the hope that either your income is going to increase or that interest rates will decrease over that time frame, and you'll be able to refinance. But there's no free money, there's no magic. Those are the two primary tools to be able to manipulate payments.
No free money, man. Serious. Christina Smallhorn. Hey there. How are you? Another real estate channel you should go check out, Miss Smallhorn there.
My question, Jeb.
My favorite other YouTubers, Christina.
Leave Christina up there. I see this beautiful pink halo around her, and then I see this pink halo around your head. Are you trying to copy Christina? Are you trying to steal her
do I have
style?
a pink? I don't have pink anymore, do I?
Is
I
it
have
violet?
blue.
Is that no?
Oh, you mean right now?
Yeah, right now. You have the little you have pink halo
channeling
around
my inner
you,
Christina.
trying to be Christina. I see how you are.
Hey, look at that. You know, just pink pops a little bit more. The blues, greens, they all work. I try to change it up. Anyway. Thanks for jumping in there, Christina. Let's see what we got. Josh, we got a couple more minutes. It's Josh's wife's birthday tonight. So Josh is going to be bailing.
She's 24.
24 years old.
Yeah.
She's half Josh's age. Imagine that. He wishes. All right. Let's see. Advice for a 24-year-old trying to buy property for the first time. I ignored the state because the state doesn't really. It's
it doesn't really matter.
Advice, budget. Focus on a budget, right? Focus on saving money. Focus on what's important to you in a property. You know, if you've got a stable job, you've got some money, saved, you're stable, you got job stability. Start talking, to a lender, go through the pre-approval process, see where you stand. That conversation could lead to things that you need to work on. It may lead to you being pre-approved and ready to buy a property, but I think those are the things that you need to start with. The budget is number one. And if you don't have a stable job, you don't have any money in the bank, then don't have the conversation with the lender yet. In my opinion, I mean, have a little bit of that, or, maybe you can have the conversation, but just don't lead with the expectation that you're going to be buying soon. Right. I think, again, there's this idea, at least at the moment, because there's so many videos on it, of house hacking, of buying first home at a super young age. Is it doable? It's absolutely doable, but you got to have those things in place.
Let me piggyback on that, Jeb. So first off, go back. One of the very first questions we answered tonight is just have a long time horizon. Make sure you're just stable in all areas of your life, your employment, your relationship, your family situation. You don't want something to change there that makes you sell shortly after buying. But that house hacking thing, Jeb, I get a lot of calls all the time. Hey, I've got money for a down payment. I got perfect credit. I don't make that much money, so I'm going to have to rent out a couple rooms. Problem is, we cannot use the income from the other rooms to qualify you. If we have it on your tax return after a couple of years, you could use it to refinance. You could use it to buy another property, but you can't use that to qualify to buy the home. So it's a little bit more complicated. It's a great tool for making home buying affordable once you get into a home. My nephew bought a home last year, rents two rooms to his buddies. treasuries, makes the payment super reasonable for him, and he's building equity, get some tax benefits, and they get a cool place to stay with a friend. But it's not as easy as the YouTube videos make it sound.
What? You're just blowing my mind.
I'm going to double blow your mind. Christina came back and said, Jeb wants to be a cool girl like Christina.
That's not blowing my mind, dude. That's truth. That's truth. I want to be a cool girl. You guys are insulting me, so I'm changing the color right now. I'm changing the color. I don't want to be a cool girl.
Jeb identifies as a cool girl, and now he wants to change and identify as something
she,
different.
She, her is what I did identify when I started. I'm changing that.
And now you're going to he, him, or they,
I don't know. They, them is where I'm going.
Okay.
I don't even know what that means.
It's going to be beige. He's going to put a beige light on
I don't want to offend anyone. I have no idea what that means. When you go plural. Like, I get the she, him, she, her, he, him, all that. You go plural, dude, you lose me. Like, I'm 42. I don't understand that. But we're going blue. We're going blue because that's what we're doing. Anyway, I probably lost some people tonight and offended some people, and I'm sorry if I did, but I was just being honest. All those people that like the glass onion, I'm sorry about offending you there as well. It just, I had a moment where I just wanted to talk about the 2 hours that I lost. Okay, any final questions? Let's just get this one here, Josh. Buying a home in Northridge, California for $1 million. Closing escrow January 3rd of 2023. So right around the corner. Congrats on that. Appraisal came in at 1.2. What can I do with that moving forward to help my payment or getting some cash for improvement? So $200,000 more than they paid for the property. Is there anything they can do with that excess equity, if you will, in order to help their situation?
First off, this has nothing to do with his question, but it's Alex Rosas, and I thought we had Axel Rose with us. But
Axel Rose.
It's Alex Rosas asking the question.
Welcome to the jungle.
So the question is, or the answer is, there's not a lot you can do with it because that appraisal is specific to that loan. So if we wanted to do a HELOC, if you want to refinance, you have to wait 6 months to use the appraised value on most loan programs. So you're going to go off the lesser of appraised value or sale price until 6 months. So if the appraisal is accurate and you could get one at the end of 6 months, you could potentially get rid of your mortgage insurance. Any number of good things can happen there. Now, in terms of getting a HELOC, that lender is most likely going to go off of your purchase price, or they're going to get an appraisal of their own. So in the short run, it doesn't do a lot for you. If you think it's valid and you got a smoking deal on the property, it will absolutely help you in the long run after 6 months when you get another appraisal and lower your interest rate, get rid of mortgage insurance, any number of things. But in the short run, it's not going to help you a lot.
I think this is a really good comment to close with tonight. As many of you guys know, we normally do 2 hours. Josh's wife, she has a birthday today. She was born this day. 24 years ago. It's amazing.
24 years ago.
24 years ago. And so he needs to go spend time with her. But this is a comment that I think is worth putting out there. Alex says, good thing about recessions is that it makes for a good time to buy if everybody else is afraid of buying. Great for negotiating. There's that quote, right? That, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. And I think 2023 is going to present opportunities for those out there that it's the right time in their life to buy. So if you're one of those people, just focus on that, have that longer term time horizon, and you'll be setting yourself up for generational wealth long term. So we'll be back next week. Actually, next week, I'm supposed to be skiing in the mountains. So I don't know what's going to happen with next week's episode, but we'll make it work.
Better take your hotspot with you or something so you can get online.
We did 50 episodes this year, guys, live. So if you haven't hit the thumbs up, do that. Either way, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the support. Appreciate you being here every week. We'll be back in 2023 to continue helping you guys become educated home buyers. Until then,